Welcome back to another calibrated Ukraine battle map update. Today is October 21st, 2025. We have a ton of updates to go over today. But before we do that, guys, I just would like to remind you that if you are new here, please click that bell and subscribe. It is the easiest way to stay notified of when I go live, when I post new videos, and all of my content going up. Also, don't forget to follow me on both Telegram and Twitter for constant updates and more news than what you get in the live streams. Thank you guys so much for joining me today, and I hope you enjoy this map update. Let's get right into it. Heading over to the map of Ukraine, we're going to talk about some things that are potentially happening, but nothing has been mapped yet. We're going to make some references to a couple areas here and just sort of dispel some of the inaccuracies about what is currently going on the front line in Ukraine. So we get a lot of rumors from the Kherson region. It's an area that is difficult to report on because, of course, any sort of landing is usually temporary just because of the nature of this area. It's hard to stay on these sort of intermediate island regions, and actually forming a bridgehead is incredibly difficult, like we saw with the Ukrainians in Krinky. So just to go over a few things, there is a report that Russian forces had managed to land somewhere in Dneprovsk, right here, and then advance out into these fields somewhat. I have seen nothing of the sort when it comes to that. So I'm not even looking at this area right now. I haven't seen any indications or any reliable reporting that anything has happened in here. Now, secondarily, we do have a report that Russian forces landed on this quarantine island right here. So that's what the Ukrainians call it. It is a urbanized area that is cut off from the rest of Kherson. On this island, you can see that there's only one bridge crossing, which I believe has been destroyed. So it's not impossible to get over here, but you do have to get into a boat to keep it supplied. And it's just become sort of a no man's land of urban, development here on this island. And so there are some reports that the Russians have landed here and that they are consolidating positions on this island. However, we just, again, do not have any information of that, any tangible evidence of this happening. So until that comes forward, this area will be left untouched. Okay, moving up to the Zaporozhye region. We have some very, very important updates here. One that has not been mapped, but one that I do hope I get to map in the near future, once some clarity comes to the situation, is a very large Russian mechanized assault that took place in Novo Danilivka and Malatakmak up here, with the Russians advancing into the village. Ukrainian sources say that the attack was repelled, while Russian sources say that they had successes and that they consolidated new positions inside of Malatakmak. So we are just waiting to hear about the results of that attack. But this would be important because, remember, Orikhiv is a very, very vital logistics and staging position for the Ukrainians, and it will do the exact same for the Russians when the Russians gain control of it. It is a crossroad village, so all of the highways in the region come and meet here, including, I believe, a railway line, but I might be wrong on the railway line. Nope, there's the railway line. So there is a railway line. Multiple highways come and meet inside of this town, small city, you could say, and then expand outward. So this is a primary Russian goal, along with Holyai-Polye, which we're about to talk about. Okay, moving over to the Holyai-Polye Dnepropetrovsk Pokrovsk front. Sorry, Russian forces continue to advance through the Dnepropetrovsk region, and they are now leveling out the front line along the Yanchor River here, which runs from Danilivka up here, a different Danilivka than the one over by Orikhiv, all the way down to the village of Poltavka. As you can see, down in the village of Poltavka, down in the village of Novo Mikhailivka, Russian forces have already crossed the Yancho River. It is not a very wide water crossing. It is pretty navigable, and I'm sorry, not navigable like you can take a boat on it, but you can cross it. You can see that there are points here that are basically there's not even a river. Sometimes the river goes underground in different areas, like up here where you can see the Russians have crossed the Yancho River. So it's not an extremely difficult river to cross. However, Russian forces have crossed it, have captured all of Poltavka, all of Novomikhailivka, and are now pushing into the eastern flank of Holyai-Polye, the other crossroad village in the Zaporozhye region. Not only that, but up here to the north, where Russians have advanced into Privlia and into Zolohra, Russian forces are now putting immense pressure on the main logistics line into Holyai-Polye that runs from Pokrovsk. Once the line of communication from Pokrovsk to Holyai-Polye is cut, the Russian capture of the crossroad village down here will be rather quick. Watch this area, guys. This area is about to experience a ton of Russian movement. Okay. Moving up to the Dnepropetrovsk region near Novopavlivka, Russian forces have consolidated positions across the Vovocha River in Filia and are pushing into Novopavlivka with probably most of the eastern bank of the Salona River right here under in the gray zone. So basically everything from this road in the center of Novopavlivka down is likely in the gray zone. This area up here, it's hard to tell, but again, we're sort of looking at a pocket here where the Russians are going to advance along this river line and just prevent the Ukrainians from crossing and continuing logistics in here. So once this area is lost, the Russians will be on the road to Mezova, another important Ukrainian defense line that is now beginning to fail. All right, moving up slightly north here, Moldetsky, just west of Udashny, has been captured by Russian forces. Guys, remember that there is a pretty intense Ukrainian defense line here in front of Mezova. Also, Mezova provides good staging for this region. So any advance here is notable, but this is not, anything of great significance. Okay. Moving over to Pokrovsk. Okay, guys, we have some pretty important updates in the Pokrovsk salient. The pocket is now closing. We got rumors about a week ago that the Ukrainians were going to slowly start pulling out. It looks like those rumors are true. I don't know if those rumors are confirmed by, the Russians not allowing the Ukrainians to get manpower into the salient, or if there is a genuine Ukrainian withdrawal occurring, or, not necessarily withdrawal, but they're not sending more manpower into this pocket. They are allowing it to close slowly with probably the hopes that they can hold it at Shevchenko outside of Pokrovsk here. I don't necessarily think that's going to happen. As we can see, the flank above Shevchenko has already been penetrated through. The lines have already been dissected. We do have geolocations of Russians in Novy Donbass here. So again, already behind the Shevchenko line. It's going to be incredibly difficult to hold anything behind Pokrovsk like they did around Avdiivka. They pulled out of Avdiivka when the Avdiivka pocket collapsed. And then they set up all of this defense and threw a bunch of manpower at the Russians to stop them on the outside of Avdiivka. That ended up lasting for a couple months. And then the Russians broke through to Orshatny, which if we go back and look, here is Avdiivka. The Russians were held at Tonke, Orlivka, Semnivka, Stepove, Bardichi, Privchini. We talked about these places for a very, very long time because the Ukrainians held this line so intensely. And then the Russians ended up breaking through to Orchutny. And then you can see that is all just history now. There's an entire new pocket that has developed 20 kilometers away from Orchutny. So things are lining up the same way here, where when the Pokrovsk pocket closes, The Ukrainians will try to hold this, but that just doesn't. I don't think that that's going to last. Like I said, the flank is compromised, and Ukrainian manpower situation doesn't allow for an Avdiivka style hold on the outside. So we can expect some quick Russian advances out towards Drovopila. But inside the salient, we will look at the Russian advances here. On the western end of Pokrovsk, Russian forces have advanced the front line to the railroad crossing here. Inside of Pokrovsk, on the very western edge, Russians have, in fact, crossed this railroad crossing and now control the highway, the E50 that runs west. They control that highway now. And they are going to begin to push out into this area, which will be the final nail in the coffin for this entire pocket. We can see here that the Russians are already directly beside the other road that leads into Pokrovsk, so there is no open flowing logistics into the city. Anything that is brought in on foot, and that is extremely dangerous. Like I've shown before, there's a whole graveyard of Ukrainian vehicles right at this crossroads right here that the Russians have filmed and posted before. So you can go take a look at that on my profile. I think I showed it also in the previous mapping video. All right, inside of Pokrovsk, Russian forces have basically captured everything south of the railway line and have captured the railway station in Pokrovsk itself. This right here means that the city is about to fall. This is the single most important area of the city. You can see that it held for quite some time around these high-rise buildings. Again, this set of high-rise buildings as well in the south. All of that has been captured now. The Russians are firmly in Pokrovsk. They have firm logistics lines into the city, and now the expansion inside of the city is going to be rapid. Down here to the south, we can see the the bottoms of the pocket are beginning to collapse. Likely, we will see Lisivka and Suki Yar fall in the near future. Novopavlivka has also been captured by Russian forces, so this pocket is likely just completely empty at this point. I think that this is going to be the next area we color in. And then over here, Russian forces have captured the village of Prompin and are now pushing into the southern end of Minhorod and are very, very close to capturing one of the large waste heaps. So, guys, the Pokrovsk pocket is officially closing. This is the end of Pokrovsk, and likely we will see a Russian expansion far beyond the set up defensive lines behind Pokrovsk because of this breakthrough that occurred in August, which, as we go up and look at it, is expanding. This was dubbed the bunny ears by the Ukrainian information space. And it's an area that has been under much contention between mappers. The entire pro-Ukrainian information space talked about how there were multiple Russian encirclements in this area, this, that, or the other. None of those appear to be true. Russians have firmly controlled this entire salient basically the entire time. There were some points where the Ukrainians were attacking into Bokivka, but that was limited. And now the Russians have reopened this entire pathway into this salient east of Drovopila. So looking at the salient itself, Russian forces have finished the capture of Novoshakove and Ivanivka. Like I said, there have been Russians geolocated in the village of Novi Donbass. They were being targeted by a Bradley that was on this section of road here, shooting at the village. So we don't know if the Russians actually have control, as there's not a ton of physical infrastructure here for people to hide in. But it just shows that the Russians are able to attack out of this salient, which means that they are definitely not cut off and surrounded. And then over here inside of the secondary salient, Toretsk-Shakove, Russian forces have advanced and entered the western half of Shakove. So guys, this entire area is about to buckle, and you're about to see an entire new flower bloom in this portion of Donetsk. All right, moving over to Konstantinivka. We got two smallish updates here. Russian forces have advanced and captured some of the defensive fortifications on the northern side of this reservoir. Sorry, maybe the western side of the reservoir, getting to the northern side of the reservoir. But this is very important because of this defensive fortification right here at this roundabout. If the Russians are able to secure this, this is the primary high ground that overlooks Konstantinivka. Gaining control of this position will also help the Russians attack towards Dovobalka and Stepanivka and just really undermine the entire Ukrainian defense on the southwestern end of Konstantinivka. And, you know, as the Ukrainians, you can see up here, are already experiencing troubles on the northern end of Konstantinivka, this is going to become a very real problem very fast for them if this area falls. Heading over to that eastern flank of Konstantinivka, we can see that Russian forces have advanced out of Perutine and have entered into Konstantinivka. They utilize these dachas in this area as well to enter into the city and now have likely consolidated positions in this portion of Konstantinivka. Another area to watch, but being a big city like it is, I would not expect a ton of Russian pressure here until Pokrovsk is finished and cleaned up. All right, moving up to Liman. Now, Liman is an area where we are experiencing, or what we are seeing, a massive amount of Russian movement. And I think the big problem here, and I know I've talked about manpower issues, but I truly think that there are very few Ukrainians actually holding the line in this entire region. I think this is one of the areas that the Ukrainian command has decided will fall, and it just doesn't make sense to hold anymore. Which I think is smart, you know, considering this is on the northern end of the Seversky Donetsk River. I will bring up a prediction right here just so you can see that river. And that really shows you the sort of the tactical situation of the Ukrainians. If we come down here to Seversk, you can see how the Ukrainians have to cross a river to the Bakhmutivka River right here, the Seversky Donetsk River right here, to supply Seversk. But not only that, if we come up here to Liman or, you know, Dubrova, Yampil, Orzani, Stary Kavana, any of these towns, you have to cross water to keep them logistically supplied. And that is a major issue, especially when the Russians have complete air dominance and they control your river crossings, right? At any given time, a Russian bomb can drop on one of your logistical pontoon crossings here that allow you to keep your garrison in Liman logistically supplied. I mean, as we can see over here on the eastern flank of Liman, Russian forces are quickly moving through the forested area here and are likely already in the city. I think that the Battle of Liman has already begun. Deep State has the gray zone basically up to the edge of the city. I have not given the Russians that much territory, but for those of you who don't know, gray zones are not usually 5 to 6 to 7 kilometers long. That doesn't make any sense. That's such a long distance to travel when you're on the ground. So usually gray zones are not that intense, that long, that far. So I've shortened it up here for conservative estimates, but I think that the Russians are operating in this dacha area of Liman now. Moving up here to the north, Mirne area, Russian forces have just advanced on the eastern end of Zershine, again towards Liman, again putting the high ground here north of Liman in extreme jeopardy for the Ukrainians. We do have reports that Russian forces are now fighting in Stavki, and it sounds like Stavki will be captured by the Russians in the coming days, which, by the way, if we go over to the topographical map, topographical map of Bakhmut here, we can see that Stavki in the Liman direction is very, very important for its high ground. You can see it is a dominant area for the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians keep this entire northern flank of Liman logistically supplied through Stavki. So the fact that the Russians are on this dominant high ground pushing into Stavki is going to put Liman into a very, very bad situation, which again is in a river valley. So you can always find out where the Russians are going to advance by looking at a topographical map. Back over to the non-topographical map. All right, here we go. Russian forces have expanded their zone of control considerably on the northern, northwestern flank of Liman here, capturing the village of Novoselivka, entering the village of Dorbosheve, and entering the village of Yarova here next to the Seversky Donets River, which means that there is no longer a line of communication or logistics to Izum from Liman. Liman is now in a tactical encirclement with that river at its back. Okay, I'm now going to remove the river, and just so you guys know, I do expect this area to move very fast. I think that the Russians are going to experience the least amount of Ukrainian resistance in this area as they begin to push up to the river, and then I expect the Ukrainians to try to hold very, very intensely at the Zaversky Donetsk River to prevent Slavyansk from being overly pressured. But what you will see is that orange line is not just a river line, but it is also a prediction line about what the front will look like very soon. And if we come down here, you can see that this is my secondary prediction around Pokrovsk, where after Pokrovsk falls, Russian forces will begin to expand the zone of control, capturing Dobopila. And then you see how this begins to encircle the entire Ukrainian line in the east of Slamyansk, Kramatorsk, Druskivka, and Konstantinivka. So very, very important and all connected. The battlefield is more connected than you guys think. All right, moving up to Kupiansk. The backside of this salient is beginning to falter. Russian forces have entered the village of Peshane over here. Consolidation of Russian positions inside of Kupiansk continues. Guys, remember, this is a big city, lots of buildings to clear, lots of consolidation to do. And there were Ukrainians that were trapped and stuck and, are being pulled out still. So a lot is happening here. Cities don't just fall and then the Russians move on immediately after. No, there's consolidation that needs to be done. So this area has been moving slow, but there is a ton happening here. So just pay attention. Also, just for your guys' tactical knowledge, this crossing right here, I believe, is the primary crossing that the Ukrainians use to supply this entire region right now. I've watched multiple videos of artillery fire and FPV drones just hitting cars as soon as they make their crossing here. I believe that the Russians are intentionally keeping this open and not pressuring the salient overly to allow the Ukrainians to keep funneling manpower into this area, because it just doesn't make sense for the Ukrainians to hold it, especially with this bank of Kupiansk lost. It makes no sense to hold this, but the Ukrainians will not retreat and the Russians will not force them to retreat because it benefits the Russians strategically at the end of the day. Okay, and then moving up to Volochansk, this is an area that never experiences movement, and now we are seeing a ton of movement. So something to pay attention to. Russian forces have advanced into the southern end of Volochansk further. They have also advanced into the northern end of Snellinikove, which is to the south of Volochansk. This is very, very bad for the Ukrainians again, because this is a strong defensive line. If the Russians are able to get through this and push down the river, they will jeopardize all of this territory for the Ukrainian armed forces that are defending it. All right, guys, that is it for me today. I wanted to say thank you so much for joining me. Remember, if you are new here, please subscribe. If you are a returning viewer and you are not subscribed, I don't know what you're doing. Don't forget to leave a comment. Tell me if I'm doing something wrong. Give me some adjustments, some pointers. If you guys think that something better can be done in these videos to make the viewing quality more enjoyable, always let me know. I appreciate you all so much for watching. Take care, and I will see you on the next live stream, the next interview, or the next mapping video. Be safe and have a fantastic week, everybody.